So we returned to Daggerford to Open Table Realms after 85 sessions. We're looking at some of the notes for 84 here, but 85 sessions, which normally I've done it every 20 sessions for this. This is an open table game. Anyone can join. I'll put the link in the comments. It's an AD&D hybrid game, second edition game with some first edition rules, treasure for XP, and a few other rules like that. And yeah, we currently have 9 players active. Sessions normally like 5 or 6 players. Sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. I think we did have a 3-player session randomly in June, maybe, for instance. But yeah, we've been chipping away twice a month, first and third Sundays, but we've also first and third Sundays. We've also added one of my players has been a co-DM for 3 sessions. He's run an adventure which the same characters can play in, and you know that it's a minor expansion into that kind of thing, but it was fun. I got to play, which was fun. So, what we've done since in the last 25 sessions, I guess, roughly half year or whatever it might be, is, let's think about it. Well, we left off last time with 2 active parties or 2 active areas, and I've had to change and add some stuff because of that in terms of the infrastructure of the game. One group had headed north and was in the Ebon Downs near Neverwinter, and so some distance away. And the remaining characters, make up essentially 2 groups, but normally then one will be active because the other is kind of people who are training or whatever. That group was in the midst of a series of final raids on Ilafan in their current run. Ilafan is still an active environment, but having broken the back of the leaders of the orcs, they had decided before finishing up, they did multiple things. I'm trying to think. I know that some of the treasure was reckoned from having found some treasure hoards from having broken after beating the orcs and then finding the old secret treasury of the fallen dwarven kingdom. They were able to return a variety of treasure to the dwarf settlers who are trying to kind of resettle the ruined hold of Ilafan. This is using N5 under Ilafan as a base, but supplemented by a few other things, particularly with nothing else by me rolling in the DMG tables or making up extra encounters for the under-detailed areas of that interesting but flawed adventure. So they found that treasure, and then they did 2 raids on the necromancer. Basically, the necromancer there. One of them was because they found out that the son of a dwarf they had rescued in Ambergul Manor, which is part of a separate sort of, call it story or plot, where the Red Wizards of Thay seem to be interested in and are stealing elemental items. And Ambergul Manor was associated with this, and this group had been sent to get these keys. Had been sent to get a key from Ambergul Manor, or an elemental item. And yeah, they'd rescued this dwarf, and then his son had escaped along with an Ogrelon, and they had been captured. They'd gone towards Ilafan, and they'd been captured by the necromancer there. And so they were like, okay, we need to go to Ilafan to rescue him. And then they decided to go back with a bit more information in tow, and they killed the necromancer and stole his stuff and killed a bunch of his minions. So they've broken, and they didn't kill all of the necromancer's minions, but they've broken 2 factions basically. Of the complication is that, as well as the dwarves, is now, due to very early campaign shenanigans where they traded their freedom with the Duergar for a map to Ilafan, there are Duergar in the depths of Ilafan. So there's still another major faction, plus the fragments of the bandits and of the orcs. And it's fun to see these things come together, especially because it's, with connecting Ilafan into a different set of adventures or set of things, but just so partly it contains the number of environments you have to design, rather than like, oh, I guess they've gone to this place. Partly because actually the D&D Next, it's a 5e playtest adventure actually I've been using for the elemental key stuff, which is pretty good, genuinely pretty good. It's an underrated fact that Chris Perkins, when he wants to, can design stuff. It's the slow corruption of his work by TSR/Wizards took over 30 years to, or over 20 years to fully come to fruition. But even in the early 10s, he's designing genuinely decent stuff. But that module actually is meant to connect into Ilafan, albeit, I've changed the story on that side of it. By that I mean the scenario. I'm using N500 Ilafan in the situation there. But yeah, so it naturally connected, but it means I don't have to expand out. I can just say, well, this is still relevant and still connected. And so that's been fun. The group that was in the north was obviously, as I say, it was looking at the Ebon Downs, which I used a mixture of material to represent the tombs there. Barrow Maze I used bits from the Neverwinter MMO. I used a few randomly designed or intentionally designed kind of small environments. So a bunch of stuff was mashed in, which the players had gone there to pick some flowers and then kind of gotten involved in. They'd found a Temple of Clemvor, which was cut off by the fact that a powerful undead had arisen in the Downs. They went to the Great Willow, which I think I discussed last time, which is Adventure on My Patreon actually, and they ended up doing their first planar adventure. They went to the Night's Rest, which is in Limbo, and is the realm of a war god actually. But it's a fairly it's not Acheron. It's very much this is the petitioners endlessly fight each other and change sides if they're defeated. They change to the side that defeated them. And there's different factions and stuff. But I also added in a Gith monastery full of illusions and confusion. And that was a fun thing for the scientist in the group, I think. So just a bit of a sidetrack there. I did that because there was a gate. It was a barrow from Barrow Maze in this case. And there was a gate into Barrow Maze. And rather than having that be oh, yes, you open this and you can go down some steps into Barrow Maze, I was like, okay, well, we'll just make it a planar option. And that was fun. They then went back to Neverwinter. And the part of this Nilfgaard all leveled up, etc. And then next went back to Laughing Hollow, which is the elven settlement near Elefan, where he said the wild elves kind of kingdom in the forest, essentially to attempt to cement a third pillar of an alliance, with the humans of Daggerford, well, not just the human-led settlement and Duchy of Daggerford, the dwarven kingdom in Elefan. Now that the king, though he is not crowned, he does have the panoply and has declared himself king. And the elves. The elves said, we will do this, we'll join the alliance if you can go into Fairy and convince our fairy ally to basically there's been an earthquake that's meant that there's less water in the Nixie Lake. The Nixies are causing trouble. Some people, by the way, are going to hate the fact there's Nixies and fairies in this. But they were like, okay, yeah, we'll go and do that. The reason the party had accepted this mission, by the way, and this is relevant to where we are today, is that the keep near Julkun, they've been offered a tract of land. They've been offered essentially a proto-domain if they arrange this alliance. And so, they went into Fairy, and this was all home written. And it was good fun. It was something where the players know that they can push the limits of the map and explore. And that does mean you end up being like, I just need to write something else then, don't I? I have to write something new, or I have to generate something new. Sometimes you can just be like, okay, we're doing some travel, we're all some encounters, and here's something basic. But, you want fully fleshed out environments. And so I wrote up, I think I wrote up 2.5 adventure sites. And they saw all of them. They also went through the kind of major settlement and met the Coral King. All these fairies were kind of shaped like fish, which freaked them out. The players were like, this is disturbing. They're obviously not actually fish, are they? It's a creepy little mermaid thing. But they were the good fairies as well. They fought piranha men. They eventually went to a brass submarine, which just appeared and smashed into a sandbank somewhere east of the settlement, and was obviously from a different plane. It was from the Prime, in fact. And they explored that, and that was fun. There was it turned out it was all fueled by ectoplasm. I might put this adventure site up on the Patreon, actually. But it was all fueled by ectoplasm, and they met a kind of lesser ghost, which was a monster I made. They met, they had to fight some other bits and pieces. They had to work out how to get it moving, because essentially this was something which they could exchange with this weird snail guy, the collector. for valuables, which they could then give as a gift to the Coral King, and the Coral King would then be pleased and then turn the water back on. They did pick up an urchin who physically, physically and metaphorically, an urchin who wanted to come back to the Prime. When he did, he turned into an aquatic elf, or seemingly, and so they now have Shrimp Po Boy as who the name that this creature has accepted. It has no other name it wants to share. So yes, that party did that, and the party in Neverwinter, I think I put this up in July. The devil went to find a kid who'd gone missing. Their various children had gone missing, but finally a rich person's child had gone missing, and it was connected to this devil cult. And so the party, having heard this, went and sought out the hideout of the devil cult, fought their way through, slew the cultists, though the leader got away, and rescued the child. And they're still in Neverwinter, and they have some leads on some psionic resonances. And this is because now we have 2 hubs for adventure. I have kind of had to, here's some maps, add a separate Neverwinter job list, partly for just the size of the post, but also so it's clear what's happening. And they've got some other rumours there. There is a Clockmaker's Crypt, for instance, which has lots of cool stuff. Here is the current militia jobs and Dagford jobs and other Dagford. So in the original hub in Dagford and this new hub in Neverwinter. We're coming to winter, of course. We're in autumn. In some cases, we're in mid-October, equivalent, Marpenoth in Forgotten Realms terms. And yes, that's something in my longest running game. We've gone through a winter, and that's an interesting kind of thing. That in that group, some of the group is in a tropical/subtropical area, so winter isn't actually a significant travelling problem. But with the other groups, they're currently in the north of the Forgotten Realms. They're in wintry places, and so they've been adventuring in Undermountain. One group did a couple of adventures in or around Undermountain, essentially. Another group bought some reindeer and travelled cross country to the High Forest, which has a subclimate because of magic, and so they're able to kind of explore stuff there. And so here we're coming up to that, and I guess there's going to be questions. It's a practical question. If everyone is just in settlements, and they might be like, oh well, maybe there's something to do there over winter. There's a city adventure we could do, but there might be some case for in some of the time skipping. Where there's nothing going on, rather than kind of saying, oh, well, what adventures are you doing now? Because actually the players might quite reasonably say, well, there's not much we're interested in. There's not much. There's a couple of city adventures we could do. Maybe we'll do that. But essentially people generally training, doing downtime stuff, and time skipping. Let's go back to the XP, character sheets, etc. If I can, if Discord will allow me. So yeah, this was the last session I ran. I'm running this weekend, so that'll be the next session I run. But yeah, we've got a bit of a travelling party here on a boat with Mastifius, Jax, Percy, Sabaton, Mo, and Dine, and there are other characters assigned to it, I believe. Tovar is as well. Von Karma, the henchman. They hired a heavy footman just as a camp guard. This is the fairy, Shrimp Po Boy. And then Bosun Williams and Frog the Rigging Boy is uncle and his nephew who are the running the keel boat that they are in. And yeah, they had a random encounter while camping because they're on the water, so obviously anything a bit like being in the air. If it's not an aerial enemy, you can skip it. If they're on the water, because they chose to, because the way the land works, because there's a land ridge which would mean going round a long way on land by foot on horse. They decided to sail on the river, which cuts the distance pretty much straight to where the tract of land is, because they obviously have received this tract of land from the Duke of Daggerford, east of Villa Farm, and they camped. And in the midnight encounter slot, they rolled an encounter. I have players roll encounters. It's a good way of ensuring transparency and clarity, that players know what's happening. They know why stuff is happening. It's not that you're screwing them as a DM. Hopefully my players know that anyway, but also it's fun, it's exciting. Players enjoy rolling the dice and seeing, what's happening? Am I in danger? And they camped and they rolled an encounter, and it was ogres who were about to eat some humans, and that was the previous session that we'd run, and then the players spent some time. They worked out what they wanted to do, and essentially they had. I think it also had an enchanter. He didn't cast spells; he just held a wand ready. But essentially, they had two decent wizards who were in a position to cast trickery magic, but not combat magic, really. And they had some stuff like they've got a level 4 paladin, and so level 5 witch, level 4 enchanter, level 4 paladin, level 3 thief, I think, level 5 fighter. So they didn't think they could fight whatever it was, like 17 ogres. But they thought they could trick them. And they did. They used invisibility to sneak the thief in, improve phantasmal force to trick them with an attack from the other side. The thief then rescued the humans and got them out. And then the witch lightning bolted the pursuing ogres who'd got to the beach. And one of them was killed. And so that was a kind of fun distraction. I think that's one, and not by distraction, I don't mean from the game. It is the game. But the map is not the territory, has, I think, an applicability that you can have quite a lot of fun with randomly generated stuff. That itself is not the aim. We're not in some kind of hardcore, fully emergent, it doesn't matter what happens, we just roll encounters and come up with creative ways of solving them. Rather, it's something where you're interspersing big things the players are personally invested in. They're like, oh, I care about this adventure, or I could get an advantage from this, or this seems lucrative, and you're interspersing it with the fact that because you've got regular encounter checks, it doesn't always happen, so maybe they have a safe journey. Here they met some ogres, they profited from it. They didn't get any money, but the two humans, a young married couple who have lost their farm to the ogres, are now with them. They don't have any possessions, so they're like, well, we'll come with you. And so they've got some porters now and cooks. And they got up to the keep near Jewel-Coon. They basically, it was evening. In fact, I think I'm not sure if they were going to go into the ruined keep in the evening, or if they're going to camp. I think they're camping, so I need to check with them, in which case it's actually 16 Marpenoth. But yeah, they explored the grounds as far as they could inside the ruined keep, the overgrown orchard and things, and they looked at the tunnel of the gatehouse and stuff like that, and just tried to get a sense of what there was. This is now theirs. It's not in good condition. It's not super defensible. There are collapses in the walls. The keep itself is not necessarily habitable. They haven't been inside yet, so they don't know, but it looks semi-ruined as well. And they didn't have any encounters whilst exploring the upper works, but they obviously expect that there might be some requirement to clear some stuff out. There's going to be animals living there. Maybe there's other stuff. They're low level. Someone might ask, well, this is a kind of proto-domain, but, the top level character in that group is level 5. You've got others approaching it. She will probably sooner rather than later end up at level 6. But, yes, fair enough. You've got... they're not 9th level. They're not name level. They haven't... they're not attracting followers via mechanics. But I don't see any harm in players who've played, in Saboteur's case, having played 46 short sessions, that is, these are usually 2-hour sessions. So 23 long sessions. But having played that long, having a reward, which is you have a base, you have you can store your stuff there, you can have some followers there, your henchmen can end up there. The other henchman, the Neverwinter group has, Grush, is actually an orc who they essentially rescued, who has joined them, and he's lawful evil, of course. But these are orcs from AD&D, and so that actually means that he's like, hey, this is the deal. If you give me stuff, I will be loyal to you. And he has a decent loyalty bonus at the moment due to having been rescued, due to having been rewarded a lot. And yeah, Von Karma is the other henchman. Henchmen are, I think, underrated in the same way hirelings are, but obviously it's partly because their functions can be misunderstood. And you can think, well, even if you like the idea of hirelings particularly, you're like, oh, we'll hire all these soldiers, and then when they die, that'll be fine. But of course, that's a good way of making sure no one in that town will ever hire out again. But they are certainly, once you have, when you're looking for just a bit more manpower, and it's for hirelings, surface or first level of the dungeon, or for a leveled helper with actual useful stuff, then one, they're a massive multiple of force. You can to some degree. I let players run multiple characters in some games, simultaneously, and I don't mind that. That's not a big problem as long as the player is competent to do so. But the the one thing there is that might not always be possible. If players have a stable of 3 characters, say, they might still be in different places, and you have a party of 4 guys. In fact, in my Greyhawk game, I think I've talked about this one. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. There was a party of a scientist and 3 thieves, and just to be competitive elsewhere, and one of the thieves was decently leveled, but just to make it's a 2E bard, so it's a thief type. But essentially, they're like, we just have to hire some footmen just to give us a bit more manpower to do stuff. So it depends on the group, and that's the thing which is only ever going to matter in stable play. Because I think if you're like, well, I've got 7 players or 6 players, and we're playing a cool single adventure path campaign, these are the stories we do, then of course you're much less often going to be like, oh man, we need extra manpower. You might sometimes, but you're much less likely to be in a situation where you are like, oh, okay, well, I just need help. You can see here, though, this is an example in this where Bryn, Robin, and Gaston, because they were it was originally 2 players, and then Gaston's player joined us, Simon, from the stream as well. But originally it was 2 players, or was it the other way around? I think it's no, I'm slandering you, Simon. It was Alex joined us late, but we're like, yeah, great. They're going on an adventure, but they hired a couple of guys to go with them just to check out the next bit of a dungeon they'd been to before. And they're technically down 2 levels, but I think it's reasonable because 1 is a small cellar. So they're down in the first level of a dungeon, essentially. They fought some crawling hands, or whatever they're called, creeping hands, crawling hands, and they have chopped their way into some kind of chapel down there. We have that one, technically we should get back to, that is in September, but because there's nothing interfering with the October date, these characters are not going to be here. Nothing they're doing is likely to end the world before these players will have left on the 12th of October or whatever to row to Julkun or sail to Julkun. So yeah, you can see the Neverwinter group is actually very, very similar. This group, in terms of my active groups, is the farthest back, but it wasn't, because it had been that the group that had been in Fairy had been farthest back, but then they've trained since. And this is one of the things. Training, again, is debatable, isn't it? Not everyone likes it. Not everyone likes the costs. Not everyone likes the time. I think there are a bunch of reasons to do it, and it fits it, and it also fits into stable play in a way that is much less offensive than if you're like, and also much more purposive than if you're like, okay, well, you only have 1 character each, but you just have to spend random time doing stuff. Unless everything in the game is timed, it doesn't really matter, does it? You'd think, unless there are loads of timers. So you'd have to forego training so you could stop the big bad, which seems sub-ideal most of the time, because if that's the way you're pressuring time, you're mostly just punishing players for having succeeded enough to get to the point of training, which you don't want to do. But yes, so you can see, by the way, these are the characters we have. These are active characters. We have a graveyard and and they're separately. I keep the henchmen separate as well. Here we go. XSXP for level caps. People who've gotten better. Kaitamar has gotten better twice. Yeah, Mo, the 5th level fighter, was killed by the half-orc cleric in Ilfam. Inactive characters and graveyard, recently added to last week by Gruvold. In fact, in Alex, my co-DM running his little game, his 3-session adventure, did manage to kill 2 characters. 1st level characters are not very robust. Kierkegaard, the dwarf, the Duergar priest of Abathor, and Gruvold, the satyr, were both killed. But the rest of us survived, and mostly because he was running a dungeon magazine adventure, mostly because of the spell books we found from that, which in dungeon aren't being XP'd, but obviously when you're looking at the AD&D rules, the 1st edition AD&D rules are 500 XP per spell level. They were pretty lucrative. But yes, we have we're up to a few 5th levels and a few that are about to hit 5th level, and many thirds and 4ths, and and a few mostly dwarves, weirdly, but a bunch of lower level guys. But it's well into that mid level area, which is, I think, the heart of AD&D. Third is still, I think, 3rd and 4th are the fully developed low level game. If you see 1st and 2nd as not quite the tutorial, mostly because they can be fun. They're a fun tutorial if they are a tutorial. But 1st and 2nd is the intro. 3rd and 4th is the fully developed lower level game, and then like 5th to 8th is the guts mid level, which so many core adventures, classic adventures are for. Then 9th plus is 9th to 12th, 9th to 13th is your earlier high level stuff, which is, I think, most campaigns can, that are long running, can realistically get to. I have a campaign in that zone, and where it's not insane to design. When you're up at 18th level, you're having to think about very complicated design choices to make it a challenge for players, and not simply relying on endless extra rules to make it challenging. But yes, so you can see, by the way I've been. This is essentially, there's a bunch of shortenings because of Discord's character limits. And no, I don't have Nitro. They're like, do you want to pay to have longer messages? No, I don't. I want to just put my messages up there. One fun thing in this is that in my other AD&D game, we're hitting similar levels as well. My other regular one. I guess in Dark Sun we were pushing that, but because you start at 3rd, so it's quicker. But it's not the whole organic, you move up through the ranks. But yeah, when you're hitting in that kind of core mid-level area, when you've got 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th level characters, I think you see a lot more fun things that you don't if you just stay at low levels. You see all kinds of options and combinations. You're able to, as a DM, throw different challenges, which is fun as well. Like, it is fun to run interesting monsters. When you're looking at it as a war game, that's fun. Session 85, which is what we finished last week, which is where, we have Tiglari, Birdie, Brecht, Bricky, Bron, yes, lots of buzz, and Gogri. I made, to irritate Alex, I intentionally made not an actually abusive character, but I did make a war priest with, I got a free fighting style from the Complete Fighter's Handbook, and got 2 times free command a day in combat, and a spell that is unique to his god, which is quite fun actually, Silverbeard. Not abusive, and the kind of thing, a bit like lots of other things which people worry are like overpowered, very rapidly evens out. It's a strong 1st level choice, but once you're at 3rd level, it's going to be very similar to most other things, because you're making trade-offs for what you've got. It's a bit like how weapon spec for fighters in 2e, which is +1 to hit, +2 to damage, and 3/2 attacks with it, is good. But once you're like 5th level, so Mo, for instance, is benefiting proportionally much less than when he's at 1st level. At 1st level, it was a way of giving him an extra option. Now it's just a way of putting a bit of extra damage and 5% hit chance on his favoured weapon. Yeah, these characters, Birdie was 2nd, Tiglari is 2nd, I think. Gruvold, who died, was actually still 1st, and everyone else was 1st as well. And this was a decent adventure. Alex did great. It was an interesting, I think, one of the stream players, Beej, he went and he found Bryce Lynch's review of it at the time. It's Dungeon 47, I think, Fragart's contraption, and Bryce was meh on it, which meant it was okay, because obviously that, in terms of his emotions about that whole run of dungeon reviews. But there were things, and Alex commented on this as well, that there were literally pages and pages of like NPC background and interaction between the NPCs, which we never accessed because we didn't. When we were going to talk to the half ogre about his background, never. And some of the interactions were very, very context specific, and you're just much more likely to do other stuff. We got a decent haul out of it. However, because the gnome we were there to theoretically rescue, who'd gone mad and was obsessed with this contraption he'd found, was digging his way out, he He is now loose in the countryside in an apparatus of Qualish, basically. And so I've put that on the rumours list. I don't know how we'll weaponise that. That's the thing I guess I can run now. That's a high level threat. We were a first and second level party. That's one thing in that adventure is once he's in it, I think it says because Alex said, oh yeah, if you need to check and think it's this number, and it does say, oh, you could just wait till he goes to bed. And you're like, so the PCs are meant to like just wait 12 hours potentially in a quite dangerous enemy area where they're vastly outnumbered by first level fighter bandits. We routed them by killing their leader and by then using spells to scare them. But they could have been back. Like you can just see it's an adventure I think that probably may have been play tested. Possibly it's very variable with Dungeon in that era. Had some real merit and some real creativity. And the gnome in the apparatus crash is quite fun, but you can't deal with that. You've got to wait till he sleeps. You then there is a dumb trap corridor, classically dumb trap corridor. Actually, I criticise that. It's not how I design traps. At least I'm a snob, maybe, for that. But yeah, we've made a lot of ground. You've a couple of characters to level up twice in that time. It's a funny one that obviously because they're short sessions, because it's twice a month, not every week. You're essentially doing a full session once a month, and so in some ways, for human time, our time, we've got people hitting fifth level after a couple of years of play. But I think, obviously contextually that makes a lot more sense because it's not like we're putting that many hours in. But it feels like good progress, and it definitely feels like I've got a better balance of knowing how to give people treasure in my own stuff and knowing how to correct the adventures I have used, like a Barrow Maze or Undale Farm adventures I have used recently, and obviously Alex used Fragart's Contraption. Funny that treasure for XP without the spellbooks. This glassware, by the way, 12,000 gold of it. We were careful, so we reduced the chance of it breaking. We still rolled maximum breakage. 10,000 gold was lost in alchemical glassware. That's a question for the author of the module. Ironically, that didn't matter that much because as we're using first edition AD&D XP rules, Fragart's spell block was 10,500. So that comfortably sorted us to level everyone up. It was a half ogre fighter and rust monster. That action economy isn't great, but this was the essential boss fight when we managed to sneak over to where Hogan the half ogre was. I guess you could have gone through the other way. You might have ended up drawing him into a fight. I haven't properly read the adventure. I was only checking the treasure descriptions and stuff. But it was a tough fight, aided by dropping command on him to let us be able to get at least one auto hit on him. The rust monster damaged loads of equipment. And Mogan killed Groovold, and it was a classic error as well. He was in half ogre with higher strength than an ogre, strength 19, but also with an ogre-like weapon attack 1d6 plus 2. But then you were presumably meant to add the strength onto that 1d6 plus 9. We didn't do that. Alex, we talked about Alex. We're like, what should I do about this? And I was like, well, no. There's a degree of offering the experience of having failed a lot as a DM and being like, I think I'd probably do this. I think he came up with some reasonable compromise, but it's still enough to kill a first level character. My guy survived a hit because I think he rolled a 1, so it's 7 damage, and I had 10 hit points, and I would need to go to -3 to die, so I was up. But yeah, thankfully it was me that got hit next because I had the hit points to survive it. You can see, by the way, final thing I guess I comment on is that I do give bonus XP, a modified bonus XP per the 2e suggestion. This sort of seems to me to come in place of giving grades in first edition. That doesn't appear at all in second edition, which is essentially a multiplier on training costs and stuff. You can also multiply down, like you can 0.5 XP or whatever via difficulty. I don't worry about that because that naturally scales off. And players, I've never had players be like, shall we grind, we're 8th level, should we go and find a horde of first level monsters to kill? And then I guess, the two of us will get 1,800 XP each, and that will help us a little bit, in one session. That's not particularly profitable anyway, but also I've never had players do that. But the grading thing makes sense in a context where you're trying to determine potential costs. A replacement for that seems to be, to me, or a lot, some kind of replacement for it is, and a way of encourage, because the equivalent is the grading is based on playing the role of your character, not playing the character of the personality of your character, playing the role. playing a thief, playing a fighter, doing the job as that character does. And the bonus XP does that. There are some bonus XP bits which are questionable. It's certainly very profitable for thieves to get gold XP doubled, but it also means they just level cap, so they can't abuse it too much. Bricky, so half ogre, Brexo, rust monster. So yeah, those were 4 HD creatures, so they got 40 XP each because they're first level, so HD times 10 times level. And priests, clerics, and wizards get spell casting basically, and occasional other special abilities. And so hence Gogri got a bunch of XP for casting a bunch of spells. This isn't going to be for everyone, but I don't find it bad as a way to help smooth some of the XP. The fact that in a short session particularly, you might end up being like, well, we've had one fight. You found a couple of pieces of treasure, but you haven't cashed out on them yet. And it just means that there's a bit of ticking along. There's a sense of players being rewarded for doing stuff rather than not doing stuff. And you, as a DM, you just limit abuse by saying, well, you can't just... It has to matter. You can't cast spells on downtime for no reason just to get XP, which is definitely a kind of joking suggestion. I can see other arguments, other systems, but it works for me. Yes, so that is the Open Table Realms after 85 sessions, including introducing a co-DM and going to the planes for the first time, twice, to Fairy and to Limbo, and starting a proto-domain. I guess in 20 sessions, at session 100 to session 105, I wonder where we'll be for that, because, certainly you'd think we'll be at winter, I'd expect, and the stuff to do with the castle, I guess, we'll know whether or not they've secured the land of their castle, their keep, and the land around it. And there's a couple of adventures to run there too, obviously. And we've got the party in Neverwinter, potentially going into the half-healed tunnels of the spell plague where it hit the city to follow the Sarnic resonance. Yeah, what have your games been like recently? Tell me in the comments. If you have any questions about what I've been running or any other rules, tell me in the comments, and I'll put the link for the game. It's on a Discord link in the description. Till next time.